morning, good afternoon. Welcome to today's community briefing. Today is the 14th of March, and my name is Gregory Sneed. Our guest today is Jackie Broxton. She's the president and CEO of the Biddy Mason Charitable Foundation. She'll be joining us momentarily, but we're glad you're here. Get your coffee, get your iced tea, whatever you need to stay hydrated and nourished. But we're going to be feeding you some wonderful historical nuggets. Mm-hmm. So you may need a little solution there to wash it down, because it's get ready, okay? So again, my name is Gregory Sneed, and I'm the owner and CEO of Lifesaver Financial Services. I help my clients feel better about their money. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the virtual stage the women history queen of the community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you said, Crystal Mitchell. Yeah, I am, women, Black history, Black women. Wow. Black folk, period. I am on my soapbox all this month, last month, I don't know, probably the rest of this entire year. Welcome to the community briefing. I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, and the inspiration for the community briefing. It is my desire, my utopia, that we all come together to unite, to create a bigger voice. And so this platform is that, a collaboration of people, business owners, people that love us, people that love the information that is disseminated from us, and most importantly, a collaboration of people who have a network of leaders and stakeholders that are in our community doing some amazing things. So we want to thank you guys for joining us. This platform is sponsored, powered and sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars and the Black BBA, the Black Business Association, as well as monetarily sponsored by Southern California Edison, SoCal Gas, PCR, Wells Fargo Bank, and Los Angeles LDC. And our newest sponsor is Urban Excellence. So we want to thank them all for believing in us. And we all have some great things coming on. So this is this is Woman History Month. And I think this year, when there is a campaign effort to put us back at June Cleaver time, this is and unfortunately for us, there was no June Cleaver for us because we had to work as domestics. So it's even worse. But at a time when women are being dismissed as far as second-class citizens, I think this month really, really means something. So I am celebrating all women, inspiring all women. And ladies, we just need to rise up. We got big voices, big feet, big everything. Let's make a big impact on what is happening in this world when it comes to us. So thank you. We have a powerful team here. Mr. Greg Sneed, you've already met him. Mr. Stephen Turner, he's the producer and makes all of this lovely stuff come together. And then Miss Robin Billups. We always have to have female energy. So she and I are the female energy. And so I want to turn it over to her so she can introduce herself. Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, we still are in vote mode. We are in vote mode up until November 4th, actually until January 16th, when the new president is inaugurated in. So we have work to do. All right, Ms. Robin.
Good day, everybody. Glad to be here. Robin Billups with the Billups Group. I assess, coach, and work with entrepreneurs and corporations who are looking to solve their compliance problems around procurement and also to community engagement. Yes, I'm a big proponent of the vote. And Crystal, I totally disagree with you. I think we should be in the vote mode 365. And then that way we're educated and we're informed and we can get that many more people to the polls. So this platform will continue to talk about the voting process, what's needed, what's coming down the pike. And, we had asked our audience and our constituents to share any information that you have in that regard. And again, I always want to make sure that I acknowledge our usual suspects who are here every week. Joseph Duncan, thank you. for being here. Thank you for being a part of the team, and others who will be dialing in. So I'm going to kick it back over to Greg.
All right. Thanks, Crystal and Robin. And then Stephen Turner generally is also one of our co-hosts. He'll be joining us usually at the tail end of the broadcast. So now, our guest today is Jackie Broxton, and she's the president and CEO of the Biddy Mason Charitable Foundation. She also has the title of HSIC, head sister in charge. And the Biddy Mason Charitable Foundation was created in 2013 to provide services and support to both the current and former foster youth here in Los Angeles County. Jackie was educated locally here in the Los Angeles City School System, and she developed a love of history and African American history, specifically in middle school. What middle school did you go to, Jackie?
Fauché and Audubon.
Fauché, all right, and Audubon. Okay, man, I've been to both of those schools. Yeah, that love has grown over the years, and currently she's completing a series of 6 one-act plays on conversations between Biddy Mason and other early Los Angeles settlers. She's a 40-year member of First AME Church of Los Angeles, where she has served in a variety of leadership positions. One of them was a wedding coordinator, and if memory serves me right, she helped coordinate my first wedding, my first marriage. Not the second one, though, but and she has been recognized by the Black faculty and staff of Los Angeles Community College Association for her leadership within the foster care community. She's also a community outreach director for the Long Journey to Freedom, an international research project examining the life of Biddy Mason. Additionally, she's the founding member of the 3FM, that's Faith Foster Families Network, which is an interfaith collaborative effort seeking to provide support to the foster community. So, without further delay, we're going to bring to the virtual stage the president and CEO of the Biddy Mason Charitable Foundation, Ms. Jackie Broxton.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Crystal. And thank you, Robin and Stephen. I'm going to apologize in advance because Spectrum just notified me that internet service is out in my area, so I can't have you on the laptop. You're on my cell phone. So if I move around and look a little strange, it's because I'm on the phone.
Looks good.
Biddy Mason. What can I tell you about Biddy Mason today? Well, first of all, let me start off by saying this. We just found this morning, one of the researchers found an article from the LA Times dated Saturday, August 12th, 1905.
Wow.
Where Biddy Mason's grandson, Robert Owens, had entered into an agreement to tear down the property that was on the original homestead that Biddy Mason purchased and build a new 2-story office building, but the first floor being dedicated to a tribute to his grandmother called the Biddy Mason Center for Negro Youth in the city of Los Angeles. So I feel like we're right on target carrying out the family's dream. Anyway, what we know about Biddy Mason's early life is very scanty because she was a slave, and prior to being sold to Robert Smith in 1843, we think she may have had 2 to 3 previous owners. When Smith purchased her in 1843, she had 2 children, Ellen and Harriet. But she was a known midwife, which would have been a good purchase for the slave owner. And she was also an herbal healer. So for him, this was a very good purchase because he could lease her out to people to deliver babies and he could collect the money. Because, you know, unless she was fortunate enough to have a slave owner who would allow her to keep the money all went to him. Smith and his wife, Rebecca, originally came from South Carolina, and they moved to Mississippi. And I think this is important. They moved to Mississippi during the period of the Trail of Tears, when the Indians were forced out of their land, and it was discovered that Mississippi was a great place to grow cotton. So he moved, seeking fortune and fame. He moved to Mississippi, and he began to purchase slaves. He purchased Biddy in 1843. We think he purchased Hannah, which was the other older slave that was in his eventual party that moved to Salt Lake City a couple of years after that. During the time that he was in Mississippi, the Mormons were evangelizing. They were having a lot of problems in other parts of the country, and they decided to evangelize in the South because they needed more members. And he became very enamored with the Mormon faith. So in 1848, he sold everything, moved his slaves and his family to Utah. They actually settled in Cottonwood, Utah, which is a small town outside of Salt Lake City. And usually when I talk to people about Biddy and I talk about the fact that they walked from Mississippi to Salt Lake City, everybody gets hung up on the fact that they walked. And to me, that's irrelevant. Everybody walked during that time. There were no trains, buses, or planes. What's important is the fact she didn't have a choice. Her goal, from everything that I've read about her, was to keep her family intact. She wanted to keep her girls. As far as we know, she never saw her biological family once she was sold. So paramount in her mind was keeping that family together. So they get to Salt Lake City, and when they arrive in Salt Lake City, Smith arrives with 13 slaves, all women and children except for one, a slave we recently found out by the name of Randy. And Randy managed to escape and was actually hidden by Mormons in Salt Lake City. And we think he eventually went to the gold fields in California because everybody was going to the gold fields that could during that time. So he was in Salt Lake City for several years. And this is not to say that other Mormons didn't own slaves, but nobody owned 13. So he he came into a situation with all these slaves, and I would imagine there would have been a fair amount of resentment towards him, because remember, slaves were assets. They weren't viewed as people, they were viewed as assets. So he was in Salt Lake City for several years, and then the Mormons, after the Mexican-American War and the Compromise of 1850, a lot of the Mormons wanted to come to California because there was a lot of land that was up for grabs. They were breaking up those large land ownings that the Californios had. And it was just a place, if you wanted to make your fortune, this seemed like a good place to go. So they came to San Bernardino in 1851. Now, California had been admitted to the Union in 1850 as a free state. I'm sure the slaves were not told that, the 13 that came with him. So they came and they settled in San Bernardino, and Biddy and Hannah were busy delivering babies, taking care of livestock, and doing all the things that slaves do. During this, prior to leaving Mississippi, Biddy got pregnant, and she had another child, Anne, which we are fairly certain that child was either the child of Robert Smith or his sons, one of his sons. So while they were in San Bernardino, there were Blacks in California who were free at the time. You had John Ballard, you had Bob Owens, you had Elizabeth Flake Rowan, who eventually became free. And because Biddy was a midwife, she had a little bit of freedom of movement to move among different groups because he was farming her out for her midwife services. Also during this time, the Mormons were experiencing some financial difficulty. The land that they purchased, which would be down now off the 15, they thought they were purchasing 80,000 acres, when in reality, they were only purchasing 30,000. And Greg, this would be of interest to you. The loan that they secured was what we now know as an adjustable loan. And at that time, it was tied to the gold rate, which was up and down and all over the place. So one month, maybe your note was $600, and next month it might be $1,200. They were running into financial difficulty. And you have Smith over here with all these slaves. So he's starting to get nervous. In the meantime, going back and forth to Los Angeles, Biddy's oldest daughter, Ellen, fell in love with the son of Robert Owens. Now, Robert Owens had been a slave in Texas. He managed to work and save enough money to buy himself. And then he came to California, worked hard, and earned enough money to buy his wife and 2 sons. He had a very prosperous livery stable business on what is now San Pedro Street. He had a contract with the U.S. Army to supply them with horses. And he, along with John Ballard, used to go up to what is now known as El Prieto Canyon, which means the dark one, bring down lumber and sell lumber. So he was financially secure. And his son was in love with Biddy's daughter. So all of this is going on in the background while the Mormons are trying to figure out what to do about this sour land deal that they got themselves into. So at one point, they go to Mr. Smith and they tell him, you need to pay your tithes, but we also need to take more of your property because we're going to have to let this other property go. And your property, because of the proximity to the Santa Ana River, is more productive than any of the other land. And this was the impetus. I mean, you hear all the time about how he tried to kidnap the slaves and take them to Texas because Texas was a free state. That's true. But what was driving him was this financial asset. Greg, can you bring up that slide I sent you? And I think this slide will show you, when you look at this slide, you see that I have Biddy's family on one side and Hannah's family on the other side. You'll see that Biddy at this time is 38, Hannah's 34. Look at the number of children in red that belong to Hannah. Biddy only has 3. Biddy was, the only physical description we have of Biddy other than the photographs is that she was a stout woman, which to me means she was probably about my size. Hannah, on the other hand, was described as being nearly white. And I'm assuming from that, very attractive. And if you look at the number of children that she had and the total value of those children, in my opinion, Smith was breeding Hannah because there was a lot of money to be made in breeding slaves. Your homework assignment from today is to look up Lumpkin's Jail in Richmond, Virginia, which was the largest slave breeding farm in the South. Wow. Anyway, look at the dates of the ages of these children and where they were born. You see, Marion is age 4, her birthplace is California. That's what makes me think that he was breeding Hannah. His ultimate goal, I believe, was to take all of the slaves to Texas and then probably sell them off one by one, because that was all of the assets that he had left. The money he made off the land for the Mormons wasn't that much by comparison. It's almost $10,000 worth of property here among these slaves. So Biddy was, you can take it down now, Greg. So Biddy was approached by Robert Simmons and we believe Elizabeth Flake Rowan, who had been another slave belonging to Mormons, and they convinced her that she should petition the court for her freedom. So she did petition the court. Smith was furious. He bribed her lawyer $100 to walk away from the case. He was successful for that. With that, he actually hid the slaves in the Santa Monica Mountains, which is interesting because they were in San Bernardino, but he went all the way across the county and hid them in the Santa Monica Mountains, probably giving him a real sense of security that no one was going to find them. He could have gone up to the Cajon Pass, which would have been a lot closer. Robert Smith found out where they were, and he and his vaqueros went up to the Santa Monica Mountains and rescued all 13 slaves. And to make a long story short, they eventually went to court. And by this time, the judge, Benjamin Hayes, who had been a slave owner from a slave owning family in Maryland, was furious because of all of the shenanigans that Robert Smith had tried to pull trying to get what he called his property back. And he ruled in favor not only of Biddy, but he also freed the other 13 slaves. So that was how they all got their freedom. Biddy, the very next day, went to work for Dr. John Griffin, who was a very prominent doctor. During that time, he had been given a lot of land by the U.S. government as in payment for his services during the Mexican-American War. And she went to work with him for the very next day for $2.50. John Griffin was the brother-in-law to Benjamin Hayes, who was the judge that ruled in Biddy's favor. So after 10 years, she had saved enough money to purchase her first piece of property at First and Spring. There's a park there today. It's a pocket park. You can't see it from the street, but there is a park there today to commemorate her life. Most people know that she was one of the founding members of First AMA Church, Los Angeles. But all of the other 8 men who helped found the church had been former slaves, and each one of them has a very compelling story. And we decided to name the foundation after her because we felt that she never received the recognition that she deserved. So I want to open it up now if there are any questions.
This is just very, 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 I love history, and I love the fact that you really brought it forward for us. And again, I honor the fact that you spent your life literally educating people around, our history and giving and empowering us to understand where we came from. My folks are from Mississippi, and I recently last spring had the opportunity to go to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and you need to go back. We really have to go back and see. So let me ask you a question, though. I want to ask about the one act play, but first I want to ask about how did you decide that with the foundation that you were going to focus on foster youth?
Well, that brings us to the other part of our story. Most slaves were orphans.
Mm-hmm.
This is a classic example. Once she was sold, she never saw her family again. LA County has the largest foster care population in the nation. There are 30,000 kids in the system. 80% of them are Black and brown. So because I like history, we really put an emphasis on history with the kids. Mm-hmm. And a clear example of that is one of our residents came to me the other day, almost in tears. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "I was at a Super Bowl party and everyone was talking about the Holocaust. And I didn't know what they were talking about. Have you ever heard of it?" I said, "Yes, I have." And she said, "I don't understand how come I didn't know about it." And this is not the first time a kid has come to me complaining about what they didn't learn in school. Mm-hmm. But because she was so upset and almost in tears, I said, "Look, let's do this. Rather than you be frustrated about the fact that you didn't know about it and everybody else in the world does," I said, "Are you willing to write a paper on it?" Mm. And she's been out of school for about 4 years. And part of our requirement is that in order to live in our facility, you have to submit to therapy and you have to be in school. So she came at a time where she's right in between semesters. I said, "This would be a good way for you to get yourself more on an academic track." She said, "I'll do that." I said, "Okay, well, let's do it like this. The first week, I just want you to research. The second week, I want you to bring me an outline. And then the third week, I want to see the paper." So as she was going through this process, she was drawing correlations to slavery and some other things. And I said, mankind is cruel to one another when they have the opportunity. And you need to understand that. So she finished the paper. She brought it to me last week. She was very excited. She said, "Now what?" I said, "Now I want you to do the Armenian Holocaust." And she said, "How come we're not going to talk about slavery? Because you have so much stuff about us in the house." I said, "I want that to be last because I want you to be able to draw some comparisons." She said, "Okay." So we put a big emphasis on history with the kids because if your father is in jail and your mother is not functioning and everybody is telling you that what you can't do and what you can't come, and you have no historical reference or anyone to look up to, it's very easy to give up.
Yeah. That's excellent, Jackie. Talk to us a little bit about the facility, and then I'm going to turn it over to Crystal because I got 59 minutes.
Well, the facility,
Greg.
The facility is a miracle.
Okay.
The facility is a miracle. We were created in 2013, and basically we had no business plan. We didn't know what we want. All we knew we wanted to do was to provide some type of service to these kids. At the time, I was still working, and I was director of major gifts and planned giving for an agency in Pasadena that cares for foster kids, which is how I got into this in the whole first place. Anyway, so we started off doing Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving Day, not the week before, the day before, but on the actual day, because we wanted to give the kids a sense of tradition. And that was successful. And from that, we went to the Resource Fair, which is an event that brings in about 25 to 30 providers of care of different services to foster youth in one place, so the kids don't have to run all over town to find out how to do this and how to do that, as well as colleges and universities. And from that, we realized, we've got something going here, but we really need to think about getting a facility. And at the time, fame was in a lot of, that was during the 100 years and things were not good. Anyway, so I had met a woman through my work at Hillsides, and I had been kind of briefing her on what we wanted to do and all of this. In the midst of all this, I got a call from an attorney with a gift of $30,000 that she wanted us to offer scholarships to kids. We had never thought about doing scholarships before. Anyway, that, we did that for a couple of years. We picked up some other funders. And one day this woman who I had met called and she said, "Where are you with the Biddy Project?" And I said, "Well, we don't have the agreement from the church and we're still, looking for a site. We're basically operating out of my garage." She said, "Well, I just got on the board for a foundation that I think will help you." And to make a long story short, they bought a house in historic West Adams for us, paid cash, and they charged us $10 a month rent. And that's how we came to be at 2193 West 25th Street. I mean, every time I tell this story, I have to pinch myself because it just sounds so totally unbelievable. The interior of the house was in pristine condition. All we had to do was paint and start installing artwork. And we have a tremendous amount of artwork in the house, including a reproduction of a mural that is at the University of San Francisco that actually depicts Biddy Mason. And probably in August of this year, we're going to be getting a second site in Highland Park. So it's been a journey that has truly had a life of its own. I don't even feel like the conductor. I feel like a passenger.
Good work, good work, good work. Greg?
So a quick question, me and money. You were talking about the value of the slaves and it was $1,000. Was that $1,000 at that time?
Yes. Yes.
So
that's based on the slave schedules at the time, and it's probably a conservative estimate given Biddy's skills, but I didn't want to go too far overboard with it.
So $1,000 then would be equivalent to about $36,000 today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some of those others were valued at, $500 and $750. So, if you take, half of that, you've got a considerable amount of money that we talk about assets, think of something worth $30,000 or $36,000 and having 10 of them. All right. So that's, the equivalent of $300,000.
And that's why he was fighting so hard to keep them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that somehow gets lost when you hear people talk about the trial, which is why I wanted to bring that slide up.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Excellent.
Talk about some of the other programs and things you're doing with the foster youth. How many are there? And then, how that ties in with women's history.
Well, the biggest program that we have and the one that we're really the most proud of, and this program is funded primarily at this point by the estate of Judge Earl Brody, which is another thing that we're very proud of. Some of you may remember, I remember Judge Brody. I never knew him personally, but I remember him as someone to be admired. He and Paul Williams and Tom Bradley, they all kind of were in the same group. As of last August, because we just opened our scholarship drive 2 weeks ago, as of last August, we have given away over $400,000 in academic scholarships to current and former foster youth. We do not put a cap on the age. They have to have been in the system in LA County. We only provide services to kids in LA County because of the number of kids that are in the system in LA County. And our oldest recipient is 50 years old. He spent 28 years in prison. And when he came to us, he had graduated from community college in prison. He was at Cal State, he had been released, and he was at Cal State LA. And now he's at USC working on his master's.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah. Story. We have two kids that are in PhD programs.
I'm going to share a photograph here of Biddy. Well, not a photograph, but a drawing, illustration.
Yeah.
And should we share the tour, or you want to do that? You can. All right, let's see if that'll work. Oh, hold on. Do you guys hear that or no?
Yes. It's good, Greg.
Hello, and welcome to a mini tour of the Biddy Mason Center located at 2193 West 25th Street in historic West Adams. The Biddy Mason Charitable Foundation began serving current and former foster youth in 2013. Since that time, our services have expanded to provide academic scholarships to current and former foster youth. The foundation has awarded just under $300,000 to current and former foster youth. This year, the foundation will offer $80,000 in scholarships. With the acquisition of our new facility, we are poised to provide support not only to foster youth, but to families impacted by the foster care system. This includes kin care and families in the reunification process. The Biddy Mason Center seeks to impact the lives of current and former foster youth by listening to the needs of the youth in their own voice. Please go to our website at www.biddymason.com for more information on our services to current and former foster youth.
Excellent.
Thanks, Greg.
Excellent.
That's awesome. Awesome.
In addition to the scholarships, we have a new group that we started late last year called Mothers Mingle. And this is a group of girls that are young women who have a history of foster care, and they're now mothers. And the group is very diverse. We have one girl in the group who's a Fulbright scholar. She went to 5 high schools, but she's a Fulbright scholar and now a teacher with LAUSD. And then we have some girls that did not graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. So it's a very diverse group, but they all are struggling with good parenting because they never had it. We also have a support group for grandparents or biological family members who are caring for children. If you're 70 years old and then you all of a sudden you get, I don't want to say stuck with, but you wind up with a 2-year-old because your daughter or your son can't manage them. That's a lot of drama for a 70-year-old person to take on. So we have a support group for them as well. And then we have limited housing. Originally, we were going to do 4 girls upstairs, and we realized quickly that 4 girls in a bathroom is not a good idea. So we cut it down to 2. I mean, we really want to be able to improve the lives of people, not complicate it further. So that seems to be working a lot better.
It's perfect. That is perfect. That is perfect. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Would you like to give a shout out to your other board members? In fact, I got a little screen here. I can share that real quick. Hopefully this works.
Yeah, we have most of the people, the majority of the people on the board have been with us since 2013. We have Ibra Bayona, who's an attorney, as well as Ellis Gordon Jr., which some of you may know. He's been our treasurer from day one.
And he was in a couple of those photos too.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ellis actually waited 2 years for me to get it together so that we could actually form the foundation. Every time I'd see him at church, he said, "Are you ready yet?" I said, "No, not yet." Patricia Wilson, Jefferson Cox, Jay Lake, David Welch, Otho Day. Some of you may know he retired from DCFS about 3 years ago. He was in administration. He has been invaluable to us in terms of unlocking doors at DCFS and making them a very strong partner for us.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to the website. You can subscribe to learn more about the resources and things, events that are coming up. You had a golf tournament last year.
Yeah, I'm still recovering from that. But anyway, golf tournaments are a lot of work. This year, we're bringing back our resource fair, which we haven't been able to do because of the pandemic. And we formed a partnership with the Sheriff's Department, Holly Mitchell's office, as well as
Jackie was on her phone, and so we may have gotten a. There she goes. She's back.
You back?
I think was she moving?
Did you lose me?
Yeah,
momentarily, but welcome back.
I want to share a couple of things. First of all, Robert Chelsea, he called me this morning. He went to school with you, I believe, so he wants to connect with you. He's down there, and Robert has a very interesting story. I don't know if you've connected with him since school, but he's done some miraculous things that's taken place with Robert over the last 10 years. So he can share that with you.
Did you say Chelsea?
Chelsea. Mm-hmm.
I think he lived down the street from me.
Yeah, he said he called me this morning. He was anxious to connect with you. So
yeah, I know.
Robert,
I don't know him as Robbie. I know him as Bobby.
Okay, all right, Bobby Chelsea then.
Right.
Wow, this is just amazing. I've been really, other than just regular history that we know of, that we hear about all the time. So I make it my business to during Black History Month to find some new unique stuff. And so the story of Biddy Mason has always intrigued me. But there are also so many others, and I've put in the chat, guys, some amazing podcasts that have just some history. And when I was, I don't know, probably about 7 or 8 years old, 12, somewhere around there. When I lived in Buffalo, New York, I was just curious, because at that time, Martin Luther King had died. Just why were we hated so much? So, because it didn't make sense to me, right? Just it still don't make sense, but I understand it now, from an economic standpoint. So I did a lot of research at that time, a lot of reading, and but there's some new stuff. There's some people that are really also dug deep. And so if you guys go into the chat, there's some podcasts there that is there. There's one, though, that just started, and this is a journalist from MSNBC. So good, Jackie, when you were talking about the price of the value of their property. So this one is called Uncounted Millions. And I don't know if this took place in California, but I do know in DC it did. The guy is who is the host of this podcast is called Tremaine Lee. And he talks about a family that was in DC. There was a compromise that Abraham Lincoln made. He wasn't all for the abolishment of slavery. It was a compromise that he did to stay in office. And so he felt that he could get the the DC slave owners more on board with keeping him in office if he came up with a reparation for slave owners.
Yeah.
And so those slave owners were, they would be compensated $300 per slave in exchange for the freedom of slaves, right?
Yeah.
But there was one of the black men, he actually bought his own freedom. Then he turned around and he bought his family, which is a family of 10. And then he went and applied for reparations for each one of those family members. So the value of them really had significance. So yeah, I'm sure that wasn't, and I've read before, and there are a lot of us that didn't know that the slave owners got reparations, not the slaves. And we're still fighting for that. So the biggest reason for us getting reparation is because they did. Right. And they did it because they felt that we were property. He did it and he didn't want to be sued for taking or freeing the property of slave owners. So this was a way to prevent having to be sued for that. So this history is imperative to us because a lot of us think that there cannot be reparations, right? But there can be. Because they paid it to somebody else and they paid it to everybody else under the planet as well, except for us. So I understand, why their value is so much. And also that breeding piece, really, really important. I read another story. I heard all of this, guys, in these podcasts that in Jamaica, the slaves that came into Jamaica were called Maroons.
Yes.
Also Haiti. And they could not tame them. So that was another reason why they started to breed them, because they figured they could breed a more subservient slave that would not run away and would not threaten their lives. So just the history that is important. And what you're doing, Jackie, is amazing. Thank you so much for your contribution. Now, my other question is, I do a youth entrepreneurship camp every summer with through the Los Angeles Urban League. And so the age is between 12 and 18. Do you have young ladies or foster kids that are in that age group? That is a free camp. We actually are doing it at the Da Vinci school, which is out in El Segundo. So they have to be able to get out there. But it's an excellent program for them to learn to create their own businesses. And we compensate them for attending camp, and they also compete in a competition. So if that's something that we could talk about, we'd love to do that.
Let me answer your question, and I want to make a comment. Because of our scholarship program, our kids right now tend to be older.
Okay.
But we're working with the county schools, with LaShawna Jenkins. I don't know if you know her or not. We're working with the county schools to develop some programs for the younger kids. I'm real concerned about middle school kids because I think that's where we lose them.
Yes.
So that's something that we could definitely work on. And then when you mentioned reparations, I recently came across a document. My mother's family is from Louisiana, and there's always been a mystery to me because she died when I was 8 years old. And they didn't like my dad, so they didn't come around. And, I just never knew that much about her family. Anyway, I discovered a document where one of her ancestors, I believe it would have been her great uncle, was part of a package of slaves that were packaged as collateral for a loan in Rapides, Louisiana. Now, that I knew that they did that, but I'd never actually read one of the documents. And in this document, it states that none of these slaves are ever to be set free, nor their descendants. I mean, if that's not
heinous.
The height of arrogance, I don't know what is. So technically, I am not supposed to even be here, according to this woman, which makes me even more adamant about doing what I do, because I'm not supposed to be here. I mean, they just carried it to the nth degree.
Jackie, what you're doing in educating, and I love what you said at the top of the conversation about creating a foundation of history. Because, yeah, they may not know their immediate family, but for them to know their community family,
Yes.
out there supporting. And, we salute you. I met you many, many years ago, and we bonded instantly around working with youth. And I just want to say, ain't nothing like a good old church girl. That's what you are. That's what you are. Ain't nothing like a good church person. When you walk in faith and you live in faith and you operate in faith, we totally received that. And I needed to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Speaking about church, Jackie, you shared a little bit about it. I mean, she also helped found the first AME church was it 1872?
Right.
I forget. I know it moved to 8th and Town, but where was it? It was on
Azusa Street. Well, originally they met in her home for a brief period of time, and then they were on Azusa Street. And then that Azusa Street church became the foundation of the Pentecostal church with Reverend Seymour.
Mm-hmm.
So, Biddy, I mean, she had to have faith. It may not be faith. Some people, if you don't spout certain words, they don't think you have faith.
Yeah.
But obviously something was driving her.
Yeah.
Something was driving her. And she had been around enough white people to know how they operate and the things that they did that she liked, because when you read her will and other documents, even though they say she couldn't read or write, she was extremely tenacious.
Mm-hmm.
She had to know what to tell those lawyers to put in the will.
Mm-hmm.
One of her daughters, Harriet, had married a man who was a little suspicious. I think he'd had a couple of marriages, and people and the community didn't feel that he was really good enough for Harriet. But Harriet, you know how love is. Harriet married him anyway. But in Biddy's will, she didn't give Harriet the property on Spring Street outright, like she gave other properties to Ellen and Robert. She gave her a life estate.
To protect that. Yeah.
She was extremely tenacious because her ultimate goal was to protect her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some commemorative things downtown and a burial site. Can you share some information with that, please?
Yeah, on the wall, they have some things embedded in the wall, like her medical bag and some of the other things that she used for delivering babies. The wall is very impressive. It's just a shame that it's hidden the way it is. You can't see it directly from the street. And unless you're walking, you wouldn't notice it because it's between two buildings.
Is there so I know you named a number of people that were pretty prominent in Los Angeles, California, Black people. Is there a book or something? I know Biddy Mason, there's a book about her, but is there a book of the history of the slaves, prominent ones that were in the
it's
California?
mentioned. Different ones are mentioned in different books, like Force of a Feather, and then Delilah Beasley's book, which the name escapes me right now. She mentions quite a few. But the book that Kevin Waite and Sally Behringer Gordon are working on, The Long Road to Freedom, will probably have more things in a more concise manner, because this is the first time anyone's ever been given the money to do the research. Because doing the research is very expensive.
Certainly.
So, and no one has ever really had the funding to do that before them. Mm-hmm. So I'm really, because Kevin sent me this information this morning about the newspaper article in the LA Times. So, but one book, there's another book called Eternity Street, but it doesn't really deal with Blacks in Los Angeles. It deals with the Mexican-American War. Mm-hmm. But it's very informative in terms of understanding early Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Very informative.
Now, what was the name of that breeding farm?
Lumpkin's Jail.
Okay.
It's in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's so much about us, man, that we really truly
don't know. And if you leave it up to people like DeSantis, you'll never know.
True that.
Yeah.
She got one of those. She made that sister move right there.
I just get so upset with him, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and a bunch of other ones. Okay.
Well, you know, one of the other kids said to me, we have a picture in the house of Black African American men working on the Capitol in DC. So one of the kids was, you know, when they come in, we don't force the history on them. We just kind of let them browse around and see. Then if they have questions, fine. And so she asked me, she said, Jackie, are you saying, is this picture saying that Black people helped build the Capitol? And I said, yes, think about it. Who else was going to provide free labor? And she looked at me, she said, well, I have a right to be here. I said, yes, you do.
Wow.
Wow.
That's beautiful. That's ownership right there.
Right
there.
Right.
Yeah. Jackie, well, how can the community help? Tell us what we need to let our audience know on how they can plug in.
Well, you never ask a nonprofit what can you do to help.
How about that? How about that right there?
Right. Donate. Even though we don't have huge operational expenses in terms of, you know, just basic things like rent. I mean, because if we were going to rent that place, we would probably be paying somewhere around $6,000 or $7,000 a month minimum, because it's a huge facility. But we do a lot of things for the kids that nobody else is going to do at their age. For instance, one of the girls that lives in the apartment, she got a job. She's going to trade tech. She bought a car and paid cash for it. So we paid for her permit to park on the street overnight. And we're getting her an auto club membership. I mean, we do those kinds of things. We have another girl who is fighting to get custody back of her son because she had a child by a man that she was not married to, and he was wealthy. He actually paid a psychologist $20,000 to do a psych evaluation of her, so you know it wasn't favorable. And when she sees her child, she's got to pay $60 for each monitored visit. So we've been helping her with the monitored visits, and we got a pro bono attorney for her because she's been fighting him prior to this, just herself with no real knowledge of the law. And they've just really used her. So we do things like that. They have, because they're older, they have adult problems.
Yeah.
We had another family that had been living in a car when they came to us, and they got a apartment. And then the apartment, there was an accident, and they lived on the corner of 7th Avenue and Jefferson. And a car ran into their apartment. So the landlord put them up in a motel, but we have a board member who had a house on 8th Avenue between Exposition and Jefferson that he's actually going to rent to them. So they'll be in a home. They have 3 children. Both of them grew up in the system. So money is always an issue.
Well, I like what you're saying. You know, we started a scholarship program at my church named after a friend of mine who worked full time and got a BA degree, and we call them book scholarships. But to your point, childcare, car service, you know, that's the everyday need that a person needs to put one foot in front of the other.
Right. Sometimes just food.
Exactly.
I mean, our hope is the garage that's on the rear of the property is being renovated by Homemade pro bono. And one of the things that we're getting is a freezer, because we want to be able to have like a mini farmer's market for the grandparents when they come once a month, because just an extra chicken or some fresh vegetables, you know, those women know how to stretch food. These young people don't know about that, but they know how to stretch food. And we want to be able to support them in that way, because if we provide lunch for those meetings, and we always have takeout boxes because they take 2 or 3 takeout boxes home, because it's a way for them to stretch their budget.
Yeah.
What's next coming up this year for the foundation?
The big thing right now is the resource fair in May, on Saturday, May 4th at Marina Del Rey. It's a biggie. And then later in the summer, we hope to open the site in Highland Park. We'll actually we thought we were getting 2 rooms there, And when we went to recheck the site, we're actually getting 7 rooms. So we got to, decide how we're going to use the space. I know I want to do an art room there because we have the space. And
history room too, maybe?
Yeah, well, obviously. Well, that was one of the conditions, is I had to decorate it the way the house is decorated on 25th Street with the artwork. And
the resource fair is on 4th of May. May the 4th be with you.
May 4th, yeah, right. Hey, we might use that, Greg. Thanks. I like that.
But our history is so important, and you have a wealth of it, and that's amazing. And I think all of us should, you should, and we have to pass this down to our children, because not only DeSantis wants to eliminate our history.
Oh, that's a lot of
everyone. Actually, that's what's behind TikTok. Is that when you're over on TikTok, you are getting like the real deal, and they can't control the algorithm like they can with Facebook and X. So that's really why they want to get rid of it, is because and yesterday, TikTok went over the board. So did I too. So on my Facebook page, if you go over there, in between my inspirational messages, way in between there, you will hear some amazing information, not just from people that look like us, but most of them don't look like it at all, but they are telling the real reason why they want to eliminate TikTok. But we have to get our stories out there. It's so important. Joseph, yes?
I posted 2 or 3. Hi there. Hi, how are you, Jackie?
Good. How are you?
Good. I posted a couple of articles today myself about TikTok, and the interesting fact that Steve Mnuchin, who is well-connected, longtime Republican, is now making moves to try to buy TikTok. And if ever anything looked like an inside job, this is it.
Exactly, because they know, and it is a sitcom. There's a meme out there where they're talking to the owner of TikTok, and he's saying, "I'm from Singapore," and they're going, "When were you born in China?" No, I'm Singapore.
It's not a meme. That really happened. That was in a congressional hearing.
Right, exactly.
They kept trying to tie him to the Chinese Communist Party, and he's like, "I'm not even Chinese."
Right. But then there were a number of Congress people that, but we're wearing suits from China. We're driving cars with chips from China. If they wanted to know we have phones from China, they already got that information. But you're not worried about Russia.
No, and the same people are cozying up to Putin every chance they get.
Right, exactly. So you know what this is about. They can't control the narrative, and they want to control the narrative.
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that we got a bunch of folks who are not technology savvy. They have an executive assistant who does all the technology work for them, so they've never had to. So this thing has become a wildfire, and now they're trying to put it out with a water hose, and it's too late. It's way too late.
Well, because they're banning books, but that is not where people get their information.
Exactly.
I mean, we already know. Put it in a book and we won't read it, right? Put it on TikTok, put it on X, put it on Facebook, and it becomes gospel. But they can't figure out how you can just completely shut down the internet. That's impossible. Yeah. But if they could, they would. Yeah, because that's the way we're learning our history and information and becoming incensed with things like what we just heard from Jackie. And so that's really what is happening.
That's the whole impetus behind the plays. And I only want foster youth to act in the plays. The one that's completed right now that we're working on is called A Conversation with Pio Pico, who was African American. Okay. A lot of Hispanics don't want to touch that, but the reality is a lot of those Californios had African American blood. And the conversation that takes place between he and Biddy Mason is about the Chinese massacre of 1872 that they practically buried. And all the racism that existed in early Los Angeles. I mean, there were Indian slave auctions. all kinds of crazy stuff. That whole period, I refer to it as gumbo, because it was just a mixture of madness. And when you talk to kids about it, you can draw certain parallels to things that are going on today.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's when I first came here in 1977, worked a 40-hour job the whole 4 years I was in college, had a fantastic internship with my degree, and could not buy a job in public relations after 5 interviews. And it blew my mind because I'm coming from Missouri, right?
Yeah.
And I'm coming to California and I'm expecting something different, but I was behind the orange curtain as well. So
right.
that didn't help any. And so again, these experiences that we have, they keep bubbling up, and we have to keep telling these stories. And Jackie, we just truly appreciate you with that computer that you have as a brain, that has divulged so much, just nuggets of good information, and with a graceful way of the way you presented this information. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It is so important. Just like you said, my grandmother used to say, at least in Alabama, George Wallace let you know what he felt. In California,
exactly.
they keep that stuff hidden. So
yeah,
it's a shocker to most people here in California, because they think it's a liberal place and that there is no racism going on here. But it's blatant in the South. Not blatant. It is not blatant here. Guys, our guest next week is Margot LaDrew. She is an incredible young lady. You want to tell us about it, Stephen? Or are you leaving it up to us? Where you go?
I think he popped on to do it, and
you took over.
Kind of, sort of.
But she has a number of programs. She also has a youth program as well, that she works with youth. But most importantly, I think what she's really known for is the Bill Pittman Rodeo and Black Rodeo. And so she'll be on. She's our guest for next week. So please, guys, come back to us to check it out. Go into the chat, pull out all of that information. One of those things you were just talking about, Jackie, there's a podcast called Draped to Maniac. Draped to Maniac is actually a mental health term in the mental health journal that was deemed by a doctor to mean that folks that escaped from slavery had a mental illness, and it was called drapetomania. And so the podcast is about that, but also his book, Black AF, the Unwashed American History. Yeah, awesome book. And it goes into the black people that were here in California, and then the mixture of the Hispanic. It goes into deep detail. He comes from a family of scholars, and so he did a lot of research on that. There's another book that I put in there called Collective Courage by Jessica Nimhard. She talks about the porters and the railroads and the labor unions and all of that. So if you guys really want to know about our history, there's plenty of information out there. You just got to go out there and find it. We want to thank you all. We're a little over time. Jackie, thank you. Anytime. Thank you. Plays, we want to support the plays. So tell us all about that.
I'll let you know.
Okay. All right.
And the resource fair.
Yeah. One thing you can do before I get off. We're collecting used handbags, ties, and accessories. No used clothing. We no longer take used clothing because of COVID. But the girls go crazy over used handbags. The guys like the belts and the ties. So if you guys are, if you're cleaning out your closet, keep us in mind.
Okay. I got a whole bag full of purses. I'll get ready to toss away.
Okay.
Especially your Coaches and your Louis, right?
Right. Yeah, they like the knockoffs.
Okay, all right. And you guys that got some ties that are little skinny ties that you're not wearing, or the big ties that are no longer fashionable, there you go. Now you have a resource to turn them over. Jackie, thank you so much. Please, you're welcome. Come back anytime. Everyone else, thank you for joining us today. Please go on our Facebook page, the Community Briefing. Go on the Recycling Black Dollars. You can go to my page and just share this, and it'll be up on YouTube next week. So please share this. Stephen, can you just tell us who our guest is next week? Now that you're back.
Next week, our special guest is Margot Wade Dudrew, who's an event planner and Wade and Associates, known for the Black Beauty Foundation, in which she's assisting those in the salon business how to retire, as well as some of the health challenges operating that occupation. Again, next Thursday, Margot Wade Dudrew.
All right. Thank you, guys. So we're going
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you
Thank
all
you, Jackie.
next week.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Late notice.
Bye-bye.